Poor Charlie's Almanack by Charles T. Munger. Picture this. It's 1957 in Omaha, Nebraska. A young, ambitious investor named Warren Buffett walks into the home of Dr. Edwin Davis, a respected local physician. He's there to pitch his new investment partnership, ready to explain his philosophy in detail. But here's the thing. The doctor barely asks any questions. He listens quietly, nods a few times, and then, just like that, agrees to invest $100,000. Back then, that was an absolutely massive sum of money. Buffett is completely floored. He has to ask, "Why did you decide so quickly?" The doctor looks at him with a slight smile and says, "Because you remind me of Charlie Munger." Now here's the wild part. Buffett had never even met Charlie Munger. He didn't know who this guy was. But in that moment, he realized he had to track him down. Who was this person whose name alone could inspire that kind of trust? That's where our story really begins. We're diving into Poor Charlie's Almanack, the wit and wisdom of Charles T. Munger. And I want to be clear, this isn't your typical business book with clean chapters and step-by-step formulas. It's more like a treasure chest, packed with speeches, essays, and brilliant off-the-cuff remarks from one of the sharpest minds of our time. Most people know Charlie Munger as Warren Buffett's quiet sidekick, the guy who sits next to him at Berkshire Hathaway's annual meetings. When someone asks for his opinion, he often just grins and says, "I have nothing to add." But thinking of him as just a sidekick, that completely misses the point. Charlie Munger is the architect. He's the one who gave Buffett the mental framework that transformed him from a good investor into a legendary one. This book has sold hundreds of thousands of copies, not because it tells you which stocks to buy, but because it offers something far more valuable. It gives you a blueprint for thinking better. It shows you how to make smarter decisions, not just with money, but in every part of your life. So here's what I'm promising you today. By the time we're done, you won't just know about Charlie Munger's investment strategies. You'll walk away with a set of mental tools, what Charlie calls a latticework of models, that can help you see the world more clearly, avoid common traps, and as Charlie loves to say, go to bed a little wiser than when you woke up. This isn't just about getting rich, it's about learning how to think, and honestly, that might be worth more than any stock portfolio could ever be. So let's jump in and unpack the wisdom of the man Warren Buffett himself calls his greatest teacher. So where do you even start with someone like Charlie Munger? Here's what most people do. If they want to succeed in business, they study business. If they're into medicine, they dive deep into medicine. They become specialists. Economists learn economics. Biologists learn biology. Makes sense, right? But Charlie spotted a huge problem with this early on. The real world isn't divided up into neat little academic departments. Life is messy, complex, and everything's connected. He came up with a brilliant way to describe the problem. He said specialists often become a man with a hammer. And when you're holding a hammer, well, everything starts to look like a nail. Think about it. An economist tries to solve every problem with supply and demand curves. A psychologist sees everything through the lens of childhood trauma. They get trapped in their own little world, unable to see the bigger picture. Charlie thought this was a terrible way to go through life. He had this great phrase for it, being like a one-legged man in an ass-kicking contest. You're just giving up a massive advantage. So what was his answer? He called it worldly wisdom. This is the foundation of everything he teaches. The idea is beautifully simple, but incredibly powerful. You can't make great decisions by only understanding one subject. You need to build what he calls a latticework of mental models in your head. Imagine your brain has a framework, like a lattice, with beams crisscrossing in all directions. Each beam represents a big idea from an important field. You need a beam from mathematics, one from physics, another from biology, psychology, history, and so on. You don't have to become an expert in everything. You just need to grab the fundamental concepts, the big ideas, that do most of the heavy lifting. Charlie figured there are maybe 80 or 90 of these crucial models. Once you've got this framework in place, any new information you come across has somewhere to stick. You start seeing connections that other people miss. You can diagnose problems more accurately because you're not looking through just one narrow lens anymore. You're seeing the whole system. This became his secret weapon. It allowed him to sit quietly in his chair and outthink people who might have been smarter in their narrow specialty, but couldn't see the bigger picture. So let's build a piece of that framework right now. What are some of the most critical models Charlie says we absolutely need? He always starts with the most basic discipline, mathematics, specifically compound interest. Benjamin Franklin, one of Charlie's heroes, called it the stone that turns all your lead into gold. It's the engine of wealth, but it's also a model for how small, steady efforts can lead to massive results over time. If you don't get compounding, you're missing one of the most powerful forces in the universe. But Charlie also points to something less obvious: permutations and combinations. He realized that life isn't a straight line. It's a complex dance of different factors coming together. Learning to think in probabilities, understanding how likely different outcomes are, that's essential. As he and Buffett like to say, investing is kind of like being at the racetrack. It's not about picking the fastest horse. It's about finding a horse whose odds are wrong. You're looking for a bet where your chances of winning are better than what the odds suggest. That's the essence of value investing. Next up is a concept from engineering and physics: the backup system, or redundancy. When engineers design a bridge, they don't just make it strong enough for the average load. They build in a huge margin of safety, so it can handle forces way beyond what it's likely to face. Charlie applies this directly to investing and life. Your finances need a margin of safety. Your career needs one too. You never want to be in a position where one mistake, one unexpected crisis, can wipe you out completely. This is why Berkshire Hathaway always keeps mountains of cash on hand. It's their safety cushion, letting them not just survive rough patches, but actually jump on opportunities when everyone else is panicking. Another physics idea is the concept of a breakpoint, or critical mass. In a nuclear reaction, nothing much happens until you hit a certain threshold, and then boom, explosion. Life is full of these moments. A business can struggle for years, and then one small change, maybe a new product or entering a new market, triggers explosive growth. Munger calls this a Lollapalooza effect, when multiple factors all push in the same direction at once, creating results that aren't just added together, but multiplied. He's always watching for these moments. But maybe the most powerful tool in Charlie's entire mental toolkit is a simple habit. He calls it inversion. There was this brilliant German mathematician named Carl Jacobi who constantly said, "Invert, always invert." He knew that tough problems are often easier to solve when you look at them backward. Charlie grabbed this idea and made it central to his thinking. Instead of asking how to reach a goal, he flips it around and asks, what would guarantee total failure? He loves telling this story about a country guy who said, "All I want to know is where I'm going to die, so I'll never go there." People laugh when they hear it, but Charlie sees real wisdom there. If you want to help India, don't just ask, "How can I help India?" Instead, ask, "What's the one thing that would hurt India the most, and how do I make sure that doesn't happen?" Want a happy life? Don't just ask what will make you happy. Ask what would absolutely guarantee you'll be miserable. The answers are usually pretty straightforward: laziness, being unreliable, envy, resentment, feeling sorry for yourself, and rigid ideology. If you can just avoid those things, you're already halfway to winning. This backward thinking forces you to spot hidden obstacles. It makes you identify the failure points you need to dodge. In investing, instead of only asking what could go right with a company, Munger always asks, what are all the ways this could blow up? What could kill this business? By identifying and avoiding the downsides, the upsides tend to take care of themselves. It's an incredibly powerful way to clear your thinking and avoid disasters. Now we get to the discipline Charlie thinks is the most important of all, yet the most misunderstood: psychology. He figured out early on that the world doesn't run on neat economic models with rational people making logical choices. It runs on actual human beings, with all their quirks, biases, and totally irrational tendencies. He realized that if he didn't understand the psychology of human error, he'd be stumbling around blind. So over decades, he developed his own checklist of the 25 standard causes of human misjudgment. These are like built-in bugs in our mental software that cause us to make dumb decisions over and over again. We don't have time for all 25, but let's hit a few of the most powerful ones. First up is what he calls reward and punishment super response tendency. This sounds super obvious, right? Of course people respond to incentives. But Charlie argues we massively, consistently underestimate just how powerful they really are. He tells this great story about Federal Express. In the early days, they had this huge problem. Their whole system depended on a hub in Memphis, where packages from everywhere would be unloaded, sorted, and reloaded onto other planes in the middle of the night. But the night shift crew was incredibly slow. Packages kept getting delayed, threatening their whole overnight delivery promise. Management tried everything. Speeches, lectures, threats. Nothing worked. Then someone had a brilliant insight. The workers were paid by the hour. So their incentive was actually to work more hours, not to finish quickly. They changed the system and started paying a flat rate per shift, telling the crew they could all go home as soon as the last plane was loaded. What happened? The problem vanished overnight. Planes were loaded in half the time. The workers figured out the most efficient methods, got the job done, and went home early. The incentive finally matched the desired outcome. Charlie's takeaway is profound. Never, ever think about something else when you should be thinking about the power of incentives. If you want to persuade someone, appeal to their interests, not just their logic. This connects directly to what he calls incentive-caused bias. This is the unconscious tendency people have to see the world in whatever way benefits them. The author Upton Sinclair nailed it. It is difficult to get a man to understand something when his salary depends on his not understanding it. Charlie saw this everywhere. He tells this disturbing story about a surgeon in his grandfather's town who was sending bushel baskets of perfectly normal gallbladders to the pathology lab. The guy was doing unnecessary surgeries. When someone asked if the surgeon knew he was basically committing fraud, the reply was, "Hell no." He genuinely thought the gallbladder was the source of all medical problems, and if you really loved your patients, you couldn't get that thing out fast enough. His incentive to perform surgeries had warped his judgment until he actually believed he was doing the right thing. This is terrifying. It explains why financial advisors might push high-fee products, or why consultants' reports almost always conclude you need more consulting. The solution? Be especially skeptical of advice when it's especially good for the advisor. Learn enough about their field to spot the bias. Always ask yourself, what are the incentives at play here? Next is what Charlie calls social proof tendency. This is our automatic instinct to think and act like the people around us. It's the monkey see, monkey do thing. Sometimes this is helpful. If you're in an unfamiliar place and see everyone running one direction, it's probably smart to run with them. But this tendency can also lead to massive stupidity. In business, it's the reason for fads and bubbles. If one oil company foolishly buys a copper mine, you'll soon see other oil companies buying copper mines. Not because they've done careful analysis, but because they feel pressure to keep up with the competition. This tendency gets even stronger when we're uncertain or stressed. That's how cults work. They isolate you from your normal environment and surround you with true believers. The new social proof becomes overwhelming, washing away your old beliefs. Charlie's lesson is simple but crucial. You're neither right nor wrong just because the crowd agrees or disagrees with you. You're right because your data and reasoning are solid. Learning to ignore the herd when they're wrong is one of the most valuable skills you can develop. Now let's talk about deprival superreaction tendency. Psychologists have proven that losing something hurts about twice as much as gaining the same thing feels good. Losing $100 stings way more than finding $100 feels great. Our brains overreact to the threat of loss. Charlie tells this funny story about his family's friendly dog. There was only one way to get bitten. Try to take food out of its mouth after it already had it. The dog couldn't help itself. It was pure instinct. Humans are exactly the same. This is why companies struggle so much to cut employee benefits, even when those benefits are bankrupting them. It's why gamblers on a losing streak often make bigger, riskier bets, desperate to get even. The pain of loss triggers irrational behavior. This was behind the famous New Coke disaster in the 1980s. Coca-Cola had data from blind taste tests showing people preferred a sweeter new formula, so they decided to replace their classic formula with New Coke. What they completely missed was deprival superreaction. They weren't just introducing something new. They were taking away something people felt belonged to them. The public outcry was immediate and intense. People felt betrayed. They didn't want a better Coke. They wanted their Coke. The company had to backtrack fast and bring back the original as Coca-Cola Classic. They'd walked straight into a psychological minefield. Another key one is inconsistency avoidance tendency. Our brains hate changing. We want to stay consistent with our past commitments, our identity, our conclusions. This is why habits are so hard to break. As the ghost says in A Christmas Carol, "I wear the chains I forged in life." Those chains are habits that felt weightless until they became unbreakable. This can be used for good. When you publicly commit to a goal, your desire for consistency helps you follow through. But it also creates what's called first conclusion bias. We cling to our initial ideas, even when mountains of evidence say they're wrong. Charles Darwin understood this danger brilliantly. He trained himself to do something extraordinary. Whenever he found evidence contradicting one of his pet theories, he'd write it down immediately. He knew if he didn't, his mind would naturally forget or dismiss it. He actively fought his own confirmation bias. Munger says this is one of the most valuable mental habits you can build, the willingness to destroy your own favorite ideas. So how did Charlie take this whole framework, this toolkit of worldly wisdom, and apply it to investing? This is where we see the huge shift in Warren Buffett's thinking, guided by Munger. When Buffett started out, he was a pure follower of his professor, Benjamin Graham. Graham's approach was what Buffett later called cigar butt investing. You find a cigar butt on the ground with one puff left. You pick it up, take that free puff, and toss it away. In investing terms, this meant buying stocks that were statistically dirt cheap. The company might be terrible, but if you could buy it for less than its working capital, you were getting that free puff. It was quantitative and formulaic. And it worked. It made Buffett rich. But Charlie taught him there was a better way. Munger said, "A great business at a fair price beats a fair business at a great price every time." This was revolutionary for Buffett. It shifted focus from the balance sheet to the quality of the actual business. Munger realized that truly massive fortunes weren't made flipping mediocre companies. They came from buying wonderful businesses and holding them for decades. The perfect example? See's Candies. In 1972, they had a chance to buy it for $25 million. By Graham's strict standards, it looked expensive, selling for 3 times book value. Buffett was hesitant and almost walked away over a small price difference. But Munger saw the real value. See's had something priceless, a powerful brand living in customers' minds. People had deep emotional connections to it. They linked it with holidays, family, quality. This gave the company pricing power. They could raise prices a bit each year, and people happily paid. It was, Charlie realized, a compound interest machine. They bought it. Today, See's Candies has generated over $2 billion in pre-tax earnings for Berkshire Hathaway. That single decision, driven by Munger's insight, changed everything. It led to later investments in giants like Coca-Cola and the Washington Post. This concept of a high-quality business is what they call a moat. Imagine a castle. The castle is the business. The moat is its durable competitive advantage, the thing protecting it from attackers. A moat could be a powerful brand, like Coca-Cola. It could be a cost advantage, like Geico or Costco. It could be network effects, like American Express. The key question they always ask: how wide and deep is the moat, and is it getting wider or narrower? They're not interested in businesses with weak moats under constant attack. They want virtually impregnable castles. Once they find such a business, run by trustworthy managers, and can buy it at a reasonable price, they're ready to do something almost unheard of on Wall Street: make a massive bet. Munger has zero patience for what he hilariously calls diversification, owning dozens or hundreds of stocks. He believes if you have a few truly great ideas, it's stupid to dilute them with your 50th best idea. He says if you had a punch card with only 20 punches, representing all the investments you could make in your lifetime, you'd think incredibly carefully about each one. You'd wait for the perfect pitch. This leads to their final principle: patience, or as Charlie colorfully puts it, sit on your ass investing. He uses the example of baseball legend Ted Williams, who in his book explained that he divided the strike zone into 77 cells the size of a baseball. He knew exactly which cells were his sweet spot, where he had the best chance of getting a hit. He'd let other pitches go by, even risking strikeouts, because swinging at mediocre pitches would kill his batting average. Munger says investing works the same way. The market constantly throws pitches at you: ideas, deals, stock prices. You don't have to swing at everything. You can wait and wait and wait for that one perfect pitch, that no-brainer opportunity, right in your sweet spot. And when it comes, you swing hard. This is why Berkshire can go years without making a major acquisition. They're not interested in activity. They want results. They're waiting for the fat pitch. As Munger says, it takes character to sit there with all that cash and do nothing. I didn't get where I am by chasing mediocre opportunities. This entire system, the mental models, the focus on quality, the patience and discipline, all flows from a core set of values Charlie lives by. First is an obsessive commitment to lifelong learning. He says, in my whole life, I've known no wise people, across a broad range of subjects, who didn't read constantly. None. Zero. He describes himself as a book with a couple of legs sticking out. He believes gaining wisdom is a moral duty. You don't just do it to get ahead. You do it because it's the right way to live. Second is fierce dedication to honesty and integrity. He lives by a simple rule: don't sell anything you wouldn't buy yourself. He believes a web of deserved trust is the highest level civilization can reach. When you have that, you don't need endless contracts or bureaucracy. You just have reliable people correctly trusting each other. Finally, there's deep humility that comes from knowing your limits. This is the circle of competence idea. It's not about how big your circle is. It's about knowing exactly where the edge is. Charlie's totally comfortable saying, I don't know. He knows trying to be an expert in everything is a recipe for disaster. As he puts it, you have to figure out where you have an edge, and play within your own circle of competence. This is the heart of worldly wisdom. It's not about being a genius. It's not about secret formulas. It's about building a reliable mental framework, being patient and disciplined and honest. It's about dedicating yourself to becoming a learning machine, so every day you go to bed a bit wiser than when you woke up. Simple idea, right? But as Charlie would say, the real trick is taking a simple idea and taking it seriously. As we step back and look at all this wisdom packed into poor Charlie's almanac, it's easy to feel a bit overwhelmed. We've jumped from physics to psychology to business strategy to Ben Franklin's philosophy. But if there's one central thread tying it all together, it's this: the quality of your thinking determines the quality of your life. This isn't just an investing book. It's a manual for rational thought. Charlie Munger's great gift isn't a list of stocks to buy. It's a way of looking at problems, a mental toolkit you can apply to any challenge in any field. What strikes me most about his approach is its profound humility. In a world that rewards loud, confident experts, Munger's philosophy starts with admitting what you don't know. The first step to wisdom, he teaches, is understanding the boundaries of your own knowledge, defining your circle of competence, and having the discipline to stay inside it. This is so counter to everything we're taught. We're supposed to have opinions on everything, to act like we have all the answers. Charlie shows us real power comes from knowing your limits. The second big takeaway for me is inversion. Such a simple mental trick, yet incredibly powerful. We're all so focused on success. How to get the promotion, build the business, be happy. Munger teaches us to flip it around. Instead of asking how to succeed, ask what would guarantee failure. What foolish, self-destructive behaviors lead to disaster? By spotting and avoiding those traps, success often takes care of itself. It's a strategy of avoiding stupidity rather than chasing brilliance. And honestly, in a complex world, that's often the more reliable path. Finally, there's the beautiful idea of the latticework of mental models. This is Charlie's answer to narrow specialization. He's telling us that to really understand reality, we can't stay in our own little intellectual bubble. We have to venture out. We need the big ideas from all major disciplines, not PhD-level expertise, just curiosity. Reading broadly, seeing the world not as separate subjects, but as one interconnected system. So how can you start using these ideas in your own life right now? First, start building your own latticework. This week, grab a book on something you know nothing about, maybe biology, history, or psychology. Look for the big foundational ideas. Don't worry about memorizing details. Just try to grasp the core concepts. Think of it as adding a new tool to your mental toolkit. Second, practice inversion on a personal challenge. Pick something you're struggling with. Instead of just thinking about how to achieve it, spend 10 minutes writing down everything that would guarantee total failure. You might be surprised by the clarity that emerges. Third, embrace being a lifelong learner. As Charlie says, go to bed every night a little wiser than when you woke up. This doesn't have to be some grand thing. It can be as simple as reading for 30 minutes before bed, instead of scrolling through your phone. It's that daily compounding of knowledge that leads to real wisdom. That was a summary of Poor Charlie's Almanack by Charles T. Munger. We've explored some incredible ideas, but a summary is like looking at photos of the Grand Canyon. It can show you the view, but can't give you the feeling of actually standing on the edge. The real magic of this book is hearing Charlie's voice, his wit, his profound wisdom in his own words. This summary is just a signpost, showing you if this journey's worth taking. If any of these ideas sparked something in you, I really encourage you to grab a copy. It's not a book you read once. It's a companion you return to again and again, finding new insights each time. The link is in the description below. Also, if you found this summary valuable, please consider liking this video and subscribing. It tells us this work is helping you, and make sure you won't miss our next dive into another life-changing book. Let's keep this journey of learning and growing going together.